What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Dope People Podcast. This is your man, Big Stu, Scott Stewart, Professor Stewart, and we have another exciting episode with somebody who I have stamped as officially dope. He didn't need my stamp anyway. Mr. Alex Jewell.
Hello.
Alex is, let me get this right. He's a socially driven led software engineer. We need more of that, particularly in the crypto custody space. One thing I've learned about Alex is he likes nice big words, and that works. I'm here for it too. So I'm into word porn. He's into food porn. Alex is currently doing some work at PolySign. Maybe we'll get into that. Cool. And I say doing some work at PolySign because we passed the whole I got a job stuff. Alex is he's living life ever at PolySign, lending his talents to PolySign for standard custody. Alex, man, is one of the only people that I've ever been able to talk to in depth about blockchain, as he is a blockchain and decentralization consultant, and get this, activist. Believe that or not, activist. Artisan food porn, I've already said that, director, and a social media marketing expert at Best Food Alex. You ought to check him out. Yeah, I don't know if he's touching up these photos or not, but the food always looks with him.
My sacrifice for the people.
Man, it works, man. Progressive writer for political organizations, global economic forums, watchdog groups dealing within where we are right now, the fourth industrial revolution, futurism, and decentralization. This is an episode where we are in the metaverse.
Yeah.
The verse. I'm just calling it the verse.
The infamous metaverse.
The infamous metaverse. Mr. Alex Jewell, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Jewell, man. What a great introduction. So how we normally start off, Alex, man, I've given that great introduction, like I said, but we normally start off with a game of this or that.
Okay, let's break it down.
Let's just have a little fun. Let's get into it.
Cool.
All right. So, digital or analog?
Oh man. I think digital. Yeah, I think digital.
Digital. Okay. All right. Interesting. And then you have to think about that. Streaming at home or going to the movies?
Streaming at home.
Okay. All right. Okay. Jordan or
LeBron? Okay, so caveat here. I'm from Cleveland originally.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Born and raised in Cleveland. However, oh man, I think Jordan. I think I have to go Jordan.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. Nights on the town or nights at home?
Nights on the town.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if you can even answer this one. This is fun, but I'm going to ask. When it comes to the pizza, Chicago style or New York style?
Which Chicago style are we talking about? Are we talking about okay. Because pub style is pretty good. All right. I think New York style.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm not going to hold that against you. Okay. Obviously, I have no bias in this. Okay. All right. Yeah, we could go through this a few more. There's so many of this. So let's just go a couple of more real quick. Okay. Let's go Chicago summers or Chicago winters?
Oh, I think Chicago winters because I don't do well with the heat. So
okay. Cash or crypto?
Crypto.
Wow. Start there. Let's start our conversation here. Thank you for participating in this or that.
Of course.
So it's interesting. I just left a group of young people. I just left a group of sixth graders.
Mm-hmm.
And I started off by making this assertion, and I want you to expound on this assertion. Okay. I said, for your generation, now these are sixth graders, these are 11, 12-year-olds.
Mm-hmm.
I said, for your generation, cash is nothing. It's all about social currency.
Yeah.
And crypto. Do you agree or disagree with that statement? And can you explain why or why not?
Yeah, 100%. Cultural currency is, this idea that we have this exchange of value, and it's actually an economic concept, but it's an exchange of value within context, right? So, you look at, even when I was a kid, we would exchange, Yu-Gi-Oh cards or Pokemon cards. We would exchange gel pens. We would exchange Crazy Bones, right? When I was a kid, even as a millennial, even before digital was as prevalent as it is now, our analog things had currency beyond just a dollar value. In fact, a lot of us had no idea what the dollar value was because our parents bought it for us, or we got it from our friends, or whatever the case may be. And so, we've always had this idea of currency that wasn't money. People just don't necessarily want to admit that within the context of digital now, right? David Bowie had David Bowie bonds, right? Where people bought bonds for David Bowie in the late 1990s, 97, I think. And, it made millions of dollars that he then bought back his music rights using, and then it actually made the bondholders' values go up. So we've always had this understanding, this inherent understanding of things like art and music, and toys and collectibles. We've always thought of those things as valuable. And of course, they've had dollar values that they've been converted to. But why were they valuable? And that's like the really hard question for people to ask, right? What makes things valuable? And in the physical space, people have had no problem understanding cultural value and cultural economy. In the digital space, a lot of older generations are having trouble making that transition, but it's the same thing. You have economies of value and cultural economies of value that don't mean anything in terms of money, right? They mean something in terms of people's quality of life or their enjoyment of it or their happiness. And those are a little bit more qualitative, but there's an economy around it still.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I tend to agree with you. Where I want to know how this makes sense is when it comes to utility. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean usefulness. I really mean my utility bills, right? Yeah. Utility bills are not going to start sending cultural currency bills or token bills or give me 3 likes of, how will cash, is it just, okay, I want you to say it. I want to hear it from you. Okay. How will utility companies, our cell phone, light, gas company, water bill, how will that impact cash, particularly for the generations of now and tomorrow?
So this might sound kind of revolutionary when I say it, but the reality is that a lot of the things that we pay cash for that are just decided are valuable because we need them aren't things I think we should be paying for. So when you think about a bottom-up economy like we're going to have in, as the fourth industrial revolution plays out, and most people won't even need to work, for example, right? In 50 years, a lot of the working class jobs or, a lot of middle class jobs will no longer exist. The reality is that people are needing to work less and less, and they're needing to participate more and more. And we can get rewarded or paid merely for participation, right? It's true democracy. So when you're paid for participation, instead of having to pay for participation in a system that we all equally own, that's decentralized, like electricity, like other utilities, then you don't have to worry about currency at all in a traditional manner, let alone a conversion to that currency, right? All that exists then are contextual currencies that are valuable to whatever they apply to. And so that's sort of the really transitional idea. Like, this is very far in the future, obviously, but thinking beyond these static sovereign currencies that were invented by people in power to maintain power, right? To maintain their sovereignty. When you decentralize that and we get paid for merely participating in the future, that's a bottom-up economy that the workers or the users own. And then you create currency within context however you'd like to. And that's really powerful.
That is powerful. That is very, very powerful. Give me an example of what you imagine. Let's stick with that for just a little bit.
Yeah,
what does participation look like in those places? Let's, and I was thinking about my electric bill, and so maybe, participation looks like me getting off the grid or getting a solar panel. Does it look like me doing some sort of labor or something? What does participation look like?
Right. So I'll give an example that I just participated in, and that'll be really good. So right now, for people who want to buy a domain name, right? If you want to buy, dopepeople.com, you have to do that through a centralized corporation, right? So there's corporations called domain registrars. You're essentially renting your name from this company that decides, you give them money every month, they decide how much you owe them, and they let you have the domain while you pay them. You don't pay them, well, good luck. So this is how Web 2 has worked. In the future, when you talk about participation, there's a really great example that I just participated in called ENS. It's the Ethereum Name Service. And ENS is a decentralized service built on a cryptocurrency called Ethereum that gives development tools and gives a platform for people to create all sorts of things, including services like this. And they've been around for several years, and a lot of us started buying .eth domain names. And these are stored as NFTs that are sent to your wallet. So instead of me renting it from some company, I own my domain names because I transferred them to myself. And I own that record. The record of ownership says I own that. I don't have to pay anybody else to own it. I already got it. Now, what they've recently done is they launched what are known as governance tokens. These aren't tokens that are currency. They're tokens that allow us to have a democratic way of all sharing the governance of the service, all sharing our responsibility in terms of how the service is run that we all benefit from and that we all own. Now, there is a caveat to this, that those governance tokens right now in the traditional economy are worth a lot of money. We essentially all got paid to be participatory in a service that we all need and that more and more people will need going into Web3. And now our governance tokens are actually worth money because other people might want them. And we can delegate those to people who can make decisions on our behalf. Representative democracy can make decisions on our behalf on how the service that we all own and run together is run. And this doesn't require some company in the middle, doesn't require us to rent anything. In fact, we're paid, we're compensated simply for participating in a thing that we all need.
Yeah. Wow. That is revolutionary. And you are explaining decentralization.
Right.
I love the term bottom-up economy.
Yep.
I've heard it in theory and never really have seen it applied.
It's really worked in theory, right?
At least it really works in theory. So you are a wordsmith, Alex. I know you're a wordsmith. You said it really works in theory. What concerns you about the bottom-up economy?
Well, I think what concerns me, with how to carry it out at scale, right? To carry it out, let's say for a country, right? Or something that really is important, right? Like electricity or food. How do we make sure that works, right? And I think the reality is that when you think about companies or institutions where the people at the top benefit greatly, their power benefits from it working, that gives them the position and the power necessary to make sure it works, right? This has been a necessary evil of sorts throughout the way society has been built. Yeah. countries like America have kind of worked because people, their jobs rely and their power relies on it kind of working. So what happens when you remove those people from the center who rely on it working for their power and wealth? You have the possibility of it not exactly working. You have the possibility of the few people needing to make really great decisions not necessarily being there at the right time, making the right decisions, right? And so the way that we have to plan this really carefully so that it does work for more important things, is relying on technology. And this scares people, right? It's sort of it goes back to the argument of, autonomous driving. People are terrified of autonomous driving because they don't trust the decision-making of technology. And some of this is fair, right? If technology has to decide between, the trolley problem of 3 people or 1 person dying, what does it pick and why? A human would also struggle with that decision, to be fair, but people don't trust machines making those decisions. And so this is philosophical. It's difficult. It's a difficult discussion, and it's very deep of like, at what point does technology make better decisions than we do? And we're not quite there yet. So, this why a lot of these things are more in the future, is because we're not quite there yet in terms of people trusting technology enough to make the really important decisions for us, or to keep us in check, right? To make sure that technology aids us in the way that it needs to. And luckily, there's a lot of really smart people working on this, and we need more representation of different types of people in those conversations to make sure that we don't have biased algorithms or biased AI.
Come on, that's where I was going.
Has happened, right? That these companies have to shut down because all of a sudden, they have racist AI or like, misogynistic AI or whatever the cases have been. Right. It's been ugly.
That's right. That's right. And so let me break it down for there are many people who will get everything that you're saying. I'm telling you, and this is no knock to any of my listeners, but there are a lot of my listeners that are gonna not understand a lot of what is being said today. Sure. And I'm hoping that they'll go back and rewind and drop comments and ask questions, because some of this stuff is even new to me. So at a very just like shallow level, what biased algorithms look like. So I was just, I haven't set me up in the metaverse yet. I'm still sorting through which platform, or if I need to be on multiple platforms. I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out still. But I was messing with one today, and they were having me to create my avatar. And there weren't any attributes of the avatar that fit me. The skin tones that they had were freaking offensive to me. It went from like, beige to like black. And it's like, come on, there's gotta be more in there. They're more, and even some of the facial features, of course, I'm a transparent guy. The lips weren't full enough, and I'm like, this is supposed to be the metaverse. Right. And so it brings me like, how many people of color, how many people like me with my mentality are sitting at the table saying, nope, that's got to be thicker, or that should be this shade, or nope, people of color from these communities think a little bit like this and not quite like that. And
exactly,
and so that's just at a very, very shallow level. But you do talk about having more representation. How do we, Alex, let me just go ahead. What do school leaders need to be teaching students? What do parents need to be teaching their kids to prepare them for this bottom-up metaverse, bottom-up economy metaverse?
Well, I think they need to be giving them access to things to play with. A lot of like when I interview people for work, engineers, the best stories that I hear are people who are like, my parents gave me computers. They weren't scared to let me touch technology at a young age. A lot of people are scared of that, right? They're scared of it having a negative impact on their social skills and things like that. And the reality is that you can balance it, right? You can make sure your kid is, having access to a balanced life while also giving them the access to technology early on and letting them play with it. Letting them discover, some people won't have this, right? Some kids won't have the love for it, but they'll have the exposure, and other people will develop a love for it, and they'll develop a love for not just using it, but understanding how it works. And if you don't give them that, then it's going to be much harder later, just like anything. Other languages, everybody should be, having exposure to a variety of languages and cultures and things early on, because these things are harder to teach later. So I think that's one thing, just having it, which is a really simple thing. As long as we fund it, right? That's the other problem, of course, is that technology is expensive still. There's problems of access in terms of what libraries get, in terms of which schools get what, and in terms of which families can afford technology. I think companies should have technology funds where you're allocated a certain stipend every year to buy technology for yourself and your family. And these corporations can afford that, right? This is huge. And it helps them. The amount of money they would save every year on training their employees to use the technology that they have would be well worth having that fund. And it would be an investment into the families, right? These are really simple things that need to happen. But the other thing I think is logic. So not teaching explicit programming, programming is very difficult, but teaching just like the logic of programming, conditions, if this, then this, looping through objects, right? I have a list of things and I need to do something to each thing. These are basic programming concepts, but they help you better understand how your technology is built that you interact with every day. And I think this is important for everybody. And it helps them be masters of the technology as opposed to being manipulated by it. So I think those two things together, exposure and understanding the logic of it, I think is huge from an early age.
That is huge. That is huge. I struggle getting educational leaders to understand the importance of these concepts. As I introduced, so at Genius Lab, we teach business and tech. Mm-hmm. And so business being not just how to start a business, which we teach that, but some economics, like starting with just money management, investing, starting to have some conversations around crypto, which I don't think you can have a conversation around crypto until you have some basic foundation understanding of just investing in stocks first. Yeah. But then when I start introducing, we also teach mobile app development. Mm-hmm. But before I ever get into a language, I'm starting with just simple decision making.
Yep.
And before I even get into the math of, before I even introduce the term conditions, because culturally conditions has a different meaning.
That's true. Right.
And as soon as I say, we're going to work in these conditions, you think constraints, which they are, but they're not in the coding sense. So before I would confuse my young people by saying, this is a condition. What you mean I can't do? No. So it's just if then. Mm-hmm. Mom, what if then is when if you want to go out with your friends, then you have to do something.
Right.
And I'm trying to help students understand that we do if thens in our mind all day, every day. You're just trying to take it out and put it onto a paper or to a program, into a computer to tell a computer what to do. And I'm also always reminding students and educators that computers are not smarter than people. The computer is not smarter than you because it took a human to program this computer. Alex, there are more than just being a coder, somebody who sits down and writes lines of code. What other kind of opportunities exist in the tech space for adults and for young people?
This is huge. Yeah, that's like a really good question, because a lot of people think the barrier to entry, that they think it's difficult because they have to be a programmer to get into tech. And that's not true at all. It takes a very diverse set of skills for us to build what we build. I work with a variety of different people. There's product people. So the product people are part of the human element of what we make. They are part of the business side too. They pair those things together to say, what are the product decisions we make of how do we word this? Where do we put this button? How does this make the most sense with what our goals are and what human goals are, our users' goals are in using our program, right? And they understand that some of what we do on the engineering side, but they honestly don't care what we do on the engineering side. They say, here's what the product needs to do, and I'm going to help you do it, right? There's project managers. So project managers are working with the product people to figure out how to create the work for us to do. So they're translating those goals into tickets for us to work on. So, you get a ticket, it's got a certain set of criteria on it of what we need to accomplish. We do the ticket, we move on to the next ticket, right? And so they're working to organize the product goals into work for us to do.
Wow.
And then, there's designers and UX designers as well, user experience. So there's people also on the human side that are designing what things look like, designing standards for the company, designing accessibility guidelines for people who might have, vision impairments, hearing impairments, other disabilities that we may not think of if we don't have those experiences. And there's people that are there to say, no, we need to change this color so that somebody who's colorblind can see it. We need to change this text size so that somebody can read it. We need to add these things so that somebody with a screen reader can understand it. So, there's those people too who are understanding, what is useful for users in a different way. So there's, those are just some examples, but these companies need every single person that makes other companies run also need to be there too. Of course, you have your accountants, you have all these people work in tech companies and are on the ground floor of building technology.
That's huge. I appreciate you breaking it down for this audience. And I'm sure you break it down on other platforms too, but I really appreciate you breaking it down for this audience. Before we get out of here, because we are coming kind of to the end, and I know you and I could talk about this for hours on end.
Yeah.
You introduced me to a term the other day, surveillance
capitalism.
Yeah. I told you guys he was a funky wordsmith. I told you guys. Word porn.
I can't take credit for that term, but there's an author named Zuboff who wrote a book on it, and it's a wonderful book. It's called Surveillance Capitalism. Her last name is Zuboff, Zuboff, but it's a great book if you want to read more about it.
We're going to put it in the show notes. We're going to put it in the show notes. And so hopefully she gives us a shout out, gives you a shout out. Surveillance capitalism scares the crap out of me. Of course, anytime I hear surveillance, I'm thinking of them alphabet boys. Somebody is watching you. You're about to be indicted. But that's not necessarily what you're talking about.
No.
Can you articulate surveillance capitalism and why people should care?
Yeah, and I'll use a good example. So the app Pokemon Go is a very popular app. I think there's still people who use it. They're still making money. But people have to stop and ask, well, how does Pokemon Go make money? Because it's free, right? And when you have an app that's free, your first question should be, how are they making money? Especially if you don't explicitly see advertising in it. Everybody knows Facebook makes money with advertising because half your feed are ads targeted towards you. But how do they target those ads? How do they know more about you? And the reality is that all of these apps communicate with each other with your data, right? Your data is the product. They're buying and selling your data all the time. And so when you look at an app like Pokemon Go, the problem is it isn't just targeting advertising to you in a way that makes you want to go somewhere. An app like Pokemon Go makes you go somewhere. It manipulates human behavior. And we've seen how this can be manipulated even with things like Facebook that seem more static, where a bunch of people will show up at a place and do something that they wouldn't otherwise do because they've been, the advertising's been manipulated in a way to make them think something that may not be true. But, and so this is where surveillance capitalism becomes dangerous because it's actually the currency of not just manipulating human buying or like what humans want. It's a manipulation of human behavior. And that is bought and sold as currency, right? When you talk about currency that's not money, that's currency that's not money, because at the end of the day, if you can manipulate human behavior, you're in control of a lot of interesting things. So an example with Pokemon Go is that you may have to go pick up a Pokemon and at a Dunkin' Donuts, and all of a sudden you get an alert from Dunkin' Donuts. It's like, hey, here's a coupon, for iced coffee or whatever. And all of a sudden you're making purchasing decisions, and they have a very, very, very well understood number of conversion. They understand how many people and how often. They know the rate of purchase there, right? They know what you're going to do. And when they can predict your behavior and control your behavior to make more money, that's a scary thing, right? Especially when it gets into the wrong hands, and we have a situation where elections or all sorts of things are manipulated by those same mechanisms, where it's not just purchasing behavior anymore. Then it's like how you see the world, right? It's how you think about different, it's how you think about whole groups of people or things that are useful for you that maybe there's an agenda not to make you think it's useful, right? There's all sorts of ways this can be manipulated that's really dangerous. And that's the fear of surveillance capitalism.
Yeah, I read the article that you wrote about that, and it's deep, and I'm glad that you are bringing these issues to light, particularly for people who should be paying more attention to it. And that's whoever is not paying enough attention to, or any attention to it. I appreciate you bringing this to our awareness. Do you believe in device addiction? I coined the term devisceral, the addiction to your mobile device, explicitly your phones. Do you believe in that sort of addiction? I know Simon Sinek talks about it a lot. What's your opinion? Are people addicted to their devices? And is that good or bad?
So I don't know so I'll preface this and say that I do believe in addiction, but I don't know if it's to the device. I think there's an addiction to certain triggers. So I might, somebody might have an addiction to getting likes, right? They might be building their ego on like refreshing and posting and wanting to get those likes because that's a dopamine hit, right? That triggers something where they feel fulfilled, they feel happy because they got those. And that's ultimately where things like Instagram have been really dangerous, because it actually increases, it creates tension around your own identity. Wow. So is there addiction related to technology? Yes. But I don't know that technology itself is the problem. I think that our devices are going to be even more ubiquitous, right? We're not moving away from using them. So addiction to them is kind of weird, right? In fact, we need them, for banking, for, ordering food, for communicating with family that we couldn't otherwise see, especially during a pandemic, right? These things it's like saying, are you addicted to other things you need, right? Are you addicted to electricity because you use it all the time? Are you addicted to water because you drink it, right? These are things that we need in life. And the real addictions are to how your behavior may be manipulated by companies that are profiting off of it. And I think that goes back to the surveillance capitalism question. Is there addiction related to how we use our technology because we've been manipulated? Yes. And that is dangerous.
Yeah. That's a great answer, man. I appreciate that response. Yeah, those triggers. It's so funny. I'm on Instagram. I probably scroll more than I post, but they have this one effect where you open your mouth and you all these donuts going in there, your face just gets fat. I don't know what it's technically called. And I tried it out, and I don't, I could do a reel and get, 100 views. And this one particular one I just did a week or so ago, it's over 24,000 views. So initially, my visceral, I'm like, holy moly. And I'm constantly checking, like, is it still? But I have that understanding of what's at play here. Like, Okay. Okay. I have an idea. I have a theory that maybe that if I get so into it, I'll try more filter. Let me see if I can get more license. How many more can I do?
Right.
And so I think that's kind of what you're talking about. If you're not that aware, that's an easy trap to kind of fall into, to using this feature more. This was a free one. We have some that you could pay for, you know what I mean? Like
Well, the
or
videos are interesting here because they're trying to steal market share from TikTok, right? How do they do that? They give random users sudden engagement that they've never had before. And it's like thrilling. So of course you're going to spend more time on reels and posting reels and creating content for the Instagram side, because Instagram wanted them those hits to take them from TikTok, right? It's a battle for your attention.
Yeah, that's right. That's absolutely right. Because it's so funny. What I did was I took that reel and posted it to TikTok and didn't do nearly as well. And so, and I know TikTok has a very, I like TikTok's algorithm. I think it's the most I like the term you use, ubiquitous, but I think it's the most unbiased algorithm for getting views. They have that every 10 person, 10 view intervals, and based on those engagements, they'll release it to 10 more, or however many, whatever that number is. I like that, makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Versus what I just experienced over on the gram is like, this don't even make sense. I get what
Up to
you're
their
trying
old
to
tricks.
do. Yeah. You got somebody else, but not me, buddy.
Yeah, not gonna happen. They're like, we've been with Vine before. We know what happened. We won that battle.
Yeah, that's good. Alex, what do you want the people to know most about Web 3.0 and the fourth industrial revolution?
I think the most important thing to know is that crypto as a term is this umbrella term for a lot of things, right? It's a whole set of utilities, much like the first internet, right? You'd never say, oh, Wi-Fi is only used for one type of thing, right? No, Wi-Fi is our connectivity. It's the protocol by which we connect to things, just like data on your phone or other utilities. And that's ultimately what blockchain is. Blockchain is a utility that can be used for a wide variety, or a lot of things, even more things than the first internet, right? And the second internet. So Web3 is really about us taking ownership of that utility, though. And I think that's the most important thing too, is that it's about ownership, right? That bottom-up economy that we talked about, taking ownership over your own data so that you're no longer being manipulated by it, but you are the one in control. You're signing every use of it. You're aware of what's happening on the chain. This is what Web3 is about, however you choose to use it, right? And I think that's the beautiful thing. Whatever you do now, you can do that in new ways and exciting ways and cheaper ways and more efficient ways using blockchain. And so it's so much more than just stocks or just trading it or just making money or getting rich quick. In fact, those are a lot of, the way that people are selling those is actually kind of scammy in lieu of what it can actually accomplish. So take those extra few minutes to look into what it can accomplish so you can get excited about what's actually being built here.
That's awesome. That's awesome. We have to have you back. And I know that you and I are working on doing some additional work around this conversation specifically. I also just want to, warn our listeners, even folks who are trying to get you in the metaverse right now, be careful, because there are some scams already popping up about metaverse. Come over here, and you got to be mindful of who's getting access to your data and all of your keys and things of that nature. So just be mindful. Come talk to Alex Jewell. Get with him. Follow him on all of his social medias. You'll be able to, click the show notes, go down to the comments, leave some questions. This is the voice of Web 3.0 right now. I'm putting the stamp on them. Dope People Podcast will put the stamp on them. Any final words? I know we gave you what you really want people to know. Any final words, Alex, before we close this out?
Yeah, I just want to reemphasize, if anybody has any questions, definitely reach out to me personally. I love talking about this stuff. I won't try to shill you anything specific. I'm not even allowed for regulatory concerns. So what I will do is give you the fundamentals of how things work, so you can make decisions for yourself on what to put your money into, or how do you survive in this changing ecosystem? How do you thrive in it? I'm totally happy to talk about that with anybody. So feel free to reach out. I'm super friendly. I won't ignore you. So I'm definitely make use of me as a resource if you want to, or you're curious, or you need to.
Shout out to Bobby Douglas for connecting me with Alex Jewell.
Yeah.
Appreciate that, Robert Bobby Douglas. Alex, it has been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure knowing you in the short amount of time that I've been knowing you, but we are getting it done. We are participating, and I appreciate you on the Dope People podcast today. So thanks a lot.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm so glad we connected. We have exciting stuff coming up for sure.
Absolutely, man. So you all, you know what it is. Until next time, peace.